We're making it in Rust using Specs, which is a library for Rust, Godot and Godot. I'm streaming again early in the morning. Well, it's 8:45 here, so it's kind of as early as my kids let me have, about the same time as they've all gone to school. So I understand this is a great time for people around the world, except all the fans that I built in Europe who are going to go to bed soon. In fact, that said, I need to just quickly tell them on our Discord that there is a stream starting. Oh, interesting! It's got a stream color and um, let's just paste that. Did I put that? Yeah, that link is still there. So just tell everybody that I'm streaming. Send now. Great, and I just might actually go live here on Discord. I haven't done this a great deal, but go live. I wonder if there's a, I don't think there's an option to share what OBS is doing, but just share this screen here like this. Go live, and then everyone watching in Discord sees this like low resolution screen. So, you know, to show you what that looks like. I think there's a way of going full screen on this, like this. Nope, it doesn't work. Okay. Anyway, I'm doing that at the same time. Great. So welcome to the stream. Today we're going to be talking about player inputs. Specifically, how do we handle entering and leaving ships? Hey dudes. Interesting how my Twitch streaming window is still showing 0 viewers. Oh, 7. Okay, so obviously some heavy averaging and time delay going on there. Welcome everybody. That's excellent. So last time we worked on a little piece of logic that meant that when you have a player and you have input, let's see, the nice diff. I might just minimize most, or I'll just make this smaller. All I really want to see is, oh, I wonder how I can, probably can stop the stream view. Yeah, there we are, pause the stream view, and then it's a little bit less distracting. Oh, okay, let me just crank that up slightly. There we are, full volume, and this microphone in the right place. Hopefully that helps. Talk a bit. I might just move the mic down. How's that? Bit better? Bit louder? If not, I can crank it up even further. Anyway, good. Thanks, Tom. So there's this concept of starting to fly a ship and player input. Those are tests actually. Interesting. I was expecting to see. Oh, that's right. I'm looking at my current diff as opposed to the previous diff. Here we go. Player input. So in the last stream, we were adding this concept that when you push the button, it detects that you're in a ship and it allows you to fly it. It's probably hard to see in that, so let's not bother. Okay. I need to change my settings. Every time you're not watching me, I make it really fiddly and tiny because then I can see it better myself and fit more stuff on my screen. And I was thinking I might start using more of my other screens. I tend to be reluctant to do that because I want to make sure you can see everything, but I usually use a lot of screens when I'm coding normally, so maybe I should try and code more naturally on stream. Everything seems to be in place. Just checking this little stream view. The chat window seems to be a bit large compared to everything else. Yeah. And then I'll make this a bit smaller to fit, like so. Great. So, oh, that didn't work. I need to not minimize that or I'll lose the chat window. Let's relax into things a little bit here. So what you can see here is the code that gets executed when a player first appears in the scene, which creates the different parts of a player, and I've added this idea of a biped inhabit, which doesn't seem to be through the system yet. So let's just go to that. Biped inhabit. So we should see that in space, in mod. And then there's a module here called inhabit. We've got a driver inhabit. We've got a biped inhabit. So I'm currently calling like human type things bipeds. I'm just thinking that anything the player can control that's like a little person that moves around is a biped at the moment. And they might also drive ships. I was initially thinking that we might want to stack, so like you can, come out of your little clone pod or whatever, and then hop on a drone, and then that drone goes to another console and hops on another drone, and then that drone goes to another console and hops on another drone, and then you get the last drone and get enough ship, and then you start flying it, right? So you got the stack of all these things that you're doing, and you pop them. But I've decided that actually drones controlling drones seems a bit silly. If you use a drone to go to a station and it's like controlling another drone, we'll just replace the current one. This concept of drones is kind of like the telepresence into, imagine you've got another ship and it's far away. It'd be kind of cool if you could control that ship from your present location, and say some giant mothership, you control some drone and some subship, fix some problems, and then walk back out, as opposed to having to always yourself translate. Like in other games like Factorio, you have to actually travel a lot, so it's kind of a way of reducing the need to travel. There probably are some advantages of taking your own player there, like your inventory, have more powerful tools and so on. So these are the three things you can have: a puck, and then a droid overrides that, and then a ship overrides that. So we need to synchronize this concept between client and server. To start off with a puck, we have an action. So I'll just pull this off and put it over here where you can't see it. An action here, player appears. This is what creates the player in the first place. Close others. And then we have another one called inhabit ship, I think. What was it? The player input. The player input is the one that's actually making us enter a ship. So when you receive a player input action, this check inhabited entity. If we're currently in avatar and we push the primary button, I was going to make it later on so that pushing that button you have to be close to a flight console, but for now we don't even check that. We just say if you're in a ship, you now drive the ship, and so you turn into a driver using inhabit, which I've put on the right hand side. So we put one of these guys in as a driver, and then we should set this ship option here as well. Client info dot inhabit, yep, and entity. So we'll make it so that the ship is equal to some ship entity like this. So that's how you enter a ship. So let's just go back to player appears. I want to make it so that when you receive a player appears action, it creates an entry in this client list. So client list is a resource in the world, in the specs world. So we should be able to make a test around that. So let's do that. There's probably a point where there's kind of an obligatory need to give you a quick demonstration of what the hell we're talking about. So let me just bring up some GIFs, because I don't really feel like running a full demo right now. These are my progress GIFs of the game in development. So what we're working on is, let's just start with the ships. So we're running a game where we've got two little spaceships like this, or many. Each one's a little factory, and they have their own physics. So in those ships we're going to have a little flight console, which is one of these, and so you're the little purple player, and you go over and you use the console to control the ship. And once you control the ship, you're going to navigate an asteroid field, somewhat like this. So that's where we're at the moment. So the one we're most interested in is that kind of interaction with consoles and so on. So I'll just put that aside for now. Boop. Great. 23 people, welcome to the stream. This is the RecallSingularity. Making a game with Godot and Rust, which is like a factory game. Doing inputs. Okay. I'll try not to re-explain myself too much this stream. I get a bit distracted by talking to you folks and then less work gets done. Player appears. I like to copy my tests like this. So the test, top test here, if you were watching the stream last time, I've simplified it. I might just pop it over here for you to read while I'm busy working on this other thing. So this is the current input test that is for getting into a ship. I'm just going to make a new one. So in this one, I want to test whether when a player appears, that the right stuff is created. So if you have a sector with a ship and pilot, so let's just get a test sector that's empty. So we've got with player in space, with player in pilot, with small ship. Yeah, I think the one we want is a completely new one. So a completely new test sector has a server and a client, but it doesn't have anything in that world. I think it it creates a space world. It doesn't create any more than that. Great. So the first thing we want to do is push an instruction. So this is how we send something from client to server. So we're going to perform an action, and the action we're going to perform is this one here called player appears. Player appears. Did I call it that in the action? Yeah, in this enumerator I did call it player appears. So player appears, it is a player appears. So that's an enum containing a struct, and then we create a new one of these. So we need a biped forcing client. Okay. Wonder if it'll suggest the right contents for this. If I just delete all that and put a curly braces, and it will just say click here to fill body. No. Okay. So we need a biped which has a location facing previous move, child world. Yeah, there's a problem with the chat window is too wide. Thank you, Word Constructor. So that looks about right now. So we need to know where the biped is going to appear. This is kind of chosen by the server, so it's generally the server would be telling the client where this new player is that's being controlled. So we'll start with this. So player appears. Where does the player appear? Fix 64. So let's just say that the player always appears at the origin, or we'll put it somewhere else just so we've got something to test for. So imagine you're respawning. So there's like a clone pod or something, and the steam comes out of the clone pod, and suddenly your player is there, or your player is animating as if they're climbing out of the pod. This is the action that will trigger that to happen. Okay, so your facing, we'll just set the facing to 0. Oh, we don't even need to specify the facing, we just need to specify, because it's new. When we look at the new function, it doesn't even specify the facing. Here it specifies, I'm just looking at this function signature here. child world ID. So we'll say that the player is in the space world, which is another way of saying that you're floating in space. Okay, so that's where the player is going to be. So that's our biped argument sorted. Force info. So that's like which force you belong to. I think I had a constant for that too. If I go back to the test world, so I was going to open our test sector. Here we are. It's going to open this over here. I know it's slightly annoying for you guys, but well, maybe I'll just put it here for now, and we'll see how that goes. Test force ID. Hello to the new people who have joined. There's now 33 people on the stream. That's nice. Action type. Sorry, it jumps to the wrong place and then I forget where I am. So I needed a force ID for this. Let me just minimize this. Or collapse as it's called. So the question is, this person who just appeared, which force are they in, which then describes, which ships belong to them and so on. Each player probably has their own force initially, but then you might have organizations which have their own force as well. Need a client ID number. I've been using 2 for my tests so far. Okay, so then we perform some ticks, so everyone should get this action and execute it. And then the question I want to ask, I've got a few questions to ask. One is there a biped in the world? So for the sector, we can get a space on the client, we can get space on the server. Let's start with the space on the client. We want to know if these different classes that I've created here, so which ones are most important to me to test at the moment? Let's say we want to know that there's a biped. Let's test for a biped and a biped inhabit. So read storage for the biped, read storage for the biped inhabit. We don't need to know about the entities, or do we? Yeah, we do need to know about the entities. So we give it a lowercase b. So what we have to do with specs is we have to actually get a number of components, and each one has its own storage. And so this call here is getting the storage for the components from this thing called system data. So you either read storage or write storage. We're only using read here, and then let me just call this biped details. We iterate through this to find all the relevant bipeds and so on. Biped's definitely going to be a biped. Inhabits, yes, we want one of those. So then these 3 things get references to the storage. You can then join on them and iterate. This is like a feature of specs. And for each one of those I'm cloning them and collecting them, so then I can do a quick check that I've got the right number of drivers, or bipeds now. And then we unpack it. So this is just me copying a previous test where we were having a ship driver. So you see lots of the stuff is in common. Biped, inhabit, entity equals biped details 1, and then so we can check that some values there are correct. So we probably want to check that we got the right creation of a biped and inhabit here with the player equaling this. But the thing I'm also interested in is this idea of the client list. So I had this client list here. This is something I kind of invented. I think I've mentioned it last stream, but I've fleshed it out between streams. I need to have a dictionary of what all the clients are controlling, so that when we get input actions from them, we know what to move. Welcome to the stream, by the way, if you've just joined. We're making players able to control things. Let me just show you one more time. Sorry for the repetition if you've been watching from the start. So players can fly these little ships, and I want them to be able to use a structure called a console to get in and get out of the ships. So that's what we're currently up to, is that input management using specs and Rust. And having described that, now I've kind of lost my train of thought, but that's not your fault. Okay, so we're going to get client list, let client list equal, we want the specs world, which we've got here in sector. So I've got this sector and I've got an idea of the space client. I want to know what they think of the space world. So we're going to fetch, and what are we fetching? Let's use the turbofish. So it's the greatest name, this little symbol, so quote, quote, colon, turbofish. Anyway, we're fetching the client list. And so that gets it from specs, and then we use, we're going to assert equal that when we ask client list for the client, we get a reasonable piece of data. Client list dot get client ID 2. What we should get is a client detail. This is on the right. Inhabit is going to be equal to an inhabits instance, which is going to be a player avatar at a certain location. So we currently inhabit a player avatar. And this avatar is, I have to go back to inhabits to see this. Split horizontally. Client list. Good. I can see both at the same time, and so can you. Sometimes I think that developing has reduced my working memory. I've got used to I spread out all my code over all my monitors, so I don't have to remember as much, and then I can just look around to see it. So am I still in the right place? Yes. Inhabits player avatar. What is the player avatar doing? It's got a world ID, and that world ID is the one that the space one. Okay, I thought it'd be a good idea to change my keyboard down to the lower position, but it didn't work, so I'll just put that back on again. That's what all the tapping is, you can hear. Just fiddling with my input devices here. Okay, world ID. Player avatars, that xlock. So the xlock should match what we told it up here. That's just a straight copy of that. And the Y lock should also match. Now I'm using a formatting system where it will reformat my code as I go. And so I kind of got in the habit of letting it do the job and not formatting too much. But until the syntax is correct, it doesn't do any formatting, so yeah, there's no facing. So that's there you go, there's the format. The client detail inhabits that. Puck is going to be sum, and it's going to point to the entity that we've got here. Entity sum, and droid is none, and ship is none, like this. And I need a comma here. So that's what I expect to be in the client list. So that's really important later on when the player enters the ship. This is kind of all the setup that's required for the previous test, essentially, to make sense. And that's everything. Let's see if this test passes. Let's see if it compiles. Run. Test the simulation. Okay. No field entity in the client detail. Yes, it's no longer called entity. So I might make a helper for this. So what was it called again? Client list. So let's make a helper for client detail that knows which of these things to return. Which is actually pretty simple. So it's a function, it's called entity, it takes a reference to self, it returns an entity. Will it always return an entity? No. It's possible that the player actually doesn't have an entity at the moment. I don't need to say the word pub here, but I do need to say the word pub here. Pub. And then it returns self.ship or else. I think that's or. Yep, excellent. Or it returns self dot droid, or it returns self dot puck. So those are priority order of the three possible things. No semicolon. Possible order of the three possible things that we would want the player to control. So we go back to the player input and make sure that's a function call, and that's the one solved. Next one is force. Doesn't expect a force info, expects a force ID. Interesting. What's the difference? I see, so force info is a structure that only contains a force ID. That's redundant, but it kind of makes sense because I'm probably thinking I need more than that later. There's going to be some detail to it, or the person might have been multiple forces, or anyway, we'll just put that in for now. This is there's a slight case of you ain't going to need it or Yagni in here, but such is life. Expected struct. So it doesn't want a full global world ID, it wants a local one. So temp world ID to local. Yeah, that's my current way of fixing that problem. Let's see what my phone has to tell me. All the things. I'll just send my daughter a loving text message real quick. I'll send her a nice email to support her in her day. And my wife is happy. Life is good. Okay. Get. Okay, so the problem here is that client list is an instance of fetch, and it's getting an instance of client list. But if you look at client list here, it's actually a member called clients we want to get. Client list itself is not a map. So I need to say client list dot clients dot get, like so. You know, I meant to pause this so that you guys don't have to watch the motion twice, because it's kind of redundant to see what's it called? You're watching me and then you can see in the corner over there, you can see yourself watching me again. It was quite fun last stream when we play with the mouse cursor and watching ourselves watch ourselves while we're watching ourselves. It was I thought it was very funny. I'm not sure how everyone else felt about it, but it was funny to me. Anyway, Clarity 2. Ah yes, so when you're getting, you don't need to pass in an actual object, you just pass in a reference to it. So we've got driver here, and it was biped that I wanted, I think. Yep. And I said the word biped, but I meant to say inhabit. Here I've used the word some where I should be using option. Obviously we don't use anything from our own crate or something. Interesting. That is, I'm surprised you don't need those, because join, for instance, needs those. Odd. There's a couple more errors here. Expected an option. I see. It's no longer an option at this point, because I was thinking I'd do first or something similar. Mismatched types. It's saying it expected the direct value, but it found a reference to it. So here we need to, well, we can put a reference here and then I'll match like this. This is looking positive. It's taking such a long time that we know that it's probably doing some good things. So it says it doesn't need modules here. Yeah. Probably used to need it, but then I added this. How do we get module? Anyway, we don't need that. So these tests all passed. The test we're interested in was player appears, and this one should fail right now, because I haven't added any logic that creates the client detail record. I'm creating a red test. So, testing. It's not a network. Player appears. Here's the test, and it fails. Okay, so it fails because I specify a world ID that doesn't exist. Okay, so the problem really is to do with synchronization, and it's because I do this perform specific tick 1 thing here, which allows the client and server to communicate. So in this case, I haven't given it enough time for the client to know about the space world ID, I think. I think that's what's going on. So I need to put an instruction in here like this to tell the two of them to communicate. So this one test object test sector actually has a client and server in it that only communicate via the same messages that I use on the actual network, but it doesn't bother turning them into binary and back. It just, creates messages and passes them over. Let's start running just this one test because it's less confusing. I am not sure why this has popped out. Oh yes, annotations were on. So here's the messages being sent. Hold on. Trying to fetch a resource, but the resource does not exist. But if I look at the line number, I need to update my version of specs at some point. Why not now? Let's just do it now. So I'm still using an old version, specs 15.1, but 16 is out. I wonder if I think it's still the latest version. Let's just quickly check that specs 16.0 is still the latest version. This is my Twitter, by the way, you should follow it. RecallSingularity on Twitter. I better put it in the chat so you can follow it more easily. Anyway, where were we going? Specs on GitHub. Remind me later. Wow, let's just show all your personal information to everyone watching. That's a great idea. Okay. Oh look, it is 16.1 now. Good, I'm glad I checked. Thanks, GitHub. So it's looking for places where we've got a different version of specs and just make sure that they're all updated. Here. 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 Well, it's we're going to say specs here, so I'll just type it in. Here. Doing a very glamorous search and replace. Oh yeah. I think that's everything. Great. So if I rerun these tests now, so we just run these. If we rerun these tests now, we should find that we get a nice, tells us which component has failed because that's a feature of the new version of specs, as opposed to having to examine the stack trace and make an informed guess. I mean, it most likely is going to be this biped inhabit, so let's just make sure that that one's in wrapper space. Yep, I missed it. So we'll just pop that in here. This is the list of all the components from specs that are allowed to be in a space world at the moment, and a couple more. And then down here we've got resources. These are things that aren't all entities. Okay. I thought I got all my versions of specs. Including the one from specs physics. Am I not using my own repository version of specs physics? Am I using some different version? In simulation. Specs physics. Yes, here it is. I am using a path to it. So, it's probably because specs physics is using something itself. It's using this thing called specs hierarchy.git. Okay, so I bet that specs hierarchy is running the wrong version. Okay, it's got a full URL there. Let's have a look at this. This sounds somewhat interesting, doesn't it? I probably should learn how to use this, or whether it's of benefit to me. So, what version specs is it using? It's still using version 14. That's annoying. So if I want to keep using specs, if I want to keep using this other option, specs physics, I'm going to have to either stick with an old version of specs, or I'm going to have to check out specs hierarchy as well. Let's see if we can do that. Copy this. So these are all my versions of my own libraries here. It's probably going to cause some compile issues of its own. Submodules, repository, manage submodules, add submodule, path is this one speaks hierarchy. Local path is going to be rs/lib/that. Add. Let's have a look at the branches here. Okay. Or pull requests. There's no pull requests. Oh, I see. Rust GD speaks hierarchy. Okay, I'll go to Tom. This one's using 16.0. Okay. So, if I move from using Cedric's version of speaks hierarchy to the Rust Godot version of speaks hierarchy, get rid of this branch here, like this, we go up to 16.0, which I imagine would fix the problem. So, run. And is there some sort of option that we're missing? Because this one has got another problem. Is it because these guys are they releasing on a different branch? What's their version? This is getting a bit annoying. Should we try using this? Well, that wouldn't fix the problem. It's annoying. Do this as opposed to the custom. So this is the thing is, speaks physics I think is not being maintained now because I'm moving to Legion on the Amethyst project, which is where speaks physics comes from. So my question is, I meant to put 6.0 here. So back to that rayon and root problem. And there's probably an option I need to specify here. Or is it that I need to put a 0 here? Yeah, I think updating specs right now is probably a bad idea. So let's not do that. So go to commit, and we should have a plus here. No. I thought, oh yes, here it is down here. We're going to reset this. That deletes the submodule. We're going to remove the git modules. The way out, that removes the submodule some more. Don't need to change this. Don't need to change any of those. Great. So now we should be back to where we were before I went down that little road. So we're in safe and secure with the old version of specs for now, and I'll solve this problem when you guys aren't waiting for me to fix it. Great. So in the process I probably missed something that I've changed. Yes, of course, in the specs physics project I've changed things. Commit submodule changes. I'll reset this as well. Reset. All this to try and get a new version of specs. Oh well. So we're just compiling a new version of player repairs. We're just going to test that when we tell the client and server that a new player has arrived, that the right data is set up. I'm expecting that this client detail is not going to be set up because I haven't put logic in to do that yet, I don't think. Yes, exactly. So we've got to the failure that I expected to see. So we expect to see. I always put these around. I put them around the opposite way from what C-Line expects. So I probably should put them around this way. There. I put it here, like this. So saying I expect the first thing to equal the second thing. That way the error is less confusing. I probably should go through all my assert equals and change them around. Oh, but inconsistent. I'm just going to keep it consistent. So I just undo what I just did. Okay. So up here, when we create a player, we need to also get the fetch this client list, and we need to modify it. Something like that, right? So let client list equals sector.space client. Well, we're not using sector.space. There's something wrong with my brackets here. I don't want to assert equal. And I don't need sum, and I need to go client list dot insert, and into the client list I'm going to put all this stuff, right? So that gets rid of that hideous orange for now. Where we're going to insert it, self.client, and we need a reference to this because it's just the way these work. So we are going to make sure that the player knows about the client detail. Yeah. Client list is equal to not sector.space client. We pass it in here world. We don't just use fetch, we use fetch mute because we want to be able to change it. We go down a bit further. We want to insert into it here. Now, it probably shouldn't be using insert, we probably should be using entry, and then a default value if it doesn't exist. I'm just thinking about what we do if the droid or ship is not none. I think the solution to this is just, I can't figure it out straight away. Someone's going to use a test-driven development approach of saying, well, if it passes all the tests I've got so far, then it's the correct behavior. But down the track, if you already know about the client and it has a ship and droid, you probably want to do some more logic around that to manage those. So what's the world ID? It's going to be the same as the new biped that we just created. So self.biped dot I'm thinking we might want to make a from in this case. Impel from, and it's from a biped and it's going to this enum called inhabits, right? Import from the prelude, and then I can alt enter on this and implement members from, and so, and what it's going to return is a new inhabits, and it's going to be a player avatar, and then what does it inhabit from the player avatar? I think I can alt enter on this, and missing fields. So the world ID is going to be child world, so you see I'm just using from for this, biped.y lock. So this means I can, because I've implemented from, what's wrong with this? Oh, I see. It's the mapping between temporary and, yeah. I need to figure out my world ID thing. Okay. So here for inhabit, I can just say biped into, because I just implemented from for it. Puck is equal to some entity. Yep, that's cool. Draw is none, ship is none. Yep, that's great. So that should now pass the test. And that will mean that if I use player appears for each player that joins the server, everyone's going to agree that there's a client with that ID controlling that biped and so on. Biped into okay. Oh yes, self.biped into. Great. Down here, no method named insert on here. Again, I need to say clients.insert. No field ylock on biped, it's probably called zlock, right? Yep. This is just the way that my 2D world projects into a 3D world, means that Y becomes Z when it moves into the 3D world. Self-client. Okay, so it's saying you don't need to borrow here when you're doing an insert. It's saying that, where's my cursor? Up here, I need to say it's a mutable client list. Hooray! Let's just quickly go through and remove some unused variables. We don't use ship or entity driver. Up here, we don't use them either. Run, you good thing, run. Yay, it passes! High five me. Okay. Wrap space, player input. I hope that wasn't too loud. Apparently it was. Sorry. Was I really quiet? Clap. It was supposed to be like... Still really loud over there. Oh my god, I'm so sorry. Anyway. Why do I keep doing that? So in player appears, we've made it so that when a player appears, they set themselves up here as a puck. And so that then leads me to think that when we create a new client, we should call player appears. Of course, as soon as I do that, it's going to change the way this test sector works, because test sector, any logic I add for clients adding will automatically happen in here. How am I going to manage this? Because, you know, like, even like after all this time, even I kind of still have a tenuous grasp on my own multiplayer system. It's been a little while since I last looked at it, and I don't think it's very clearly defined exactly how all the parts fit together. Let's have a look in the network source server. When they connect, handle messages, there's some point where the server becomes aware that there's a new client. I think it's for the first time we start processing messages enough from a different client we haven't seen before. Right? Process message. There needs to be something that comes along and says, okay, so there's a player who's hanging out and hasn't got any player puck. Let's make one. Let's choose where that goes. action submit chat. It's probably pretty funny to watch a streamer who doesn't even know how their own program works anymore because it's been too long since they looked at this process, or it's not well enough defined, it's too hairy for them to understand what's going on in their own code. Unfortunately, it's pretty common. It's partially because I haven't really sat down and figured it out. It's just too much for me to figure out at the moment. I was kind of iterating on it until it makes sense, and then I know at some point it's all going to click into place for myself. Yeah, that's what I'm thinking as well, Toggle, but it is a good idea to come back and refactor and document this process. And that's what I do. Like, whenever I get a bit stuck and I don't know how to implement the next piece of functionality, I tidy things up. For instance, last time I created this nice boundary between production floor and space, and I created nice wrappers for them, and then I moved all the source files around, and created these prelude and so on, because it was getting too hard to add source files. I didn't know where they're supposed to go, and when I kind of lost them in the file structure, I couldn't find them again. So, I agree, that's how I solved the problem too. But at the moment, it's kind of like when a client connects, the server just starts updating it to tell it everything that's going on. It doesn't really keep track of that a client joined as such. Let's see, process incoming. Connection. There's a new ID. Wonder if I should send an action when the particular client joins. When the connection is closed, there's stuff being created by the server. It would be the most natural way to go about doing it, I guess. So let's say we go into a sector, which is this thing that manages all the stuff. So we'll increase this, and we've got this concept of clients, I think, in the sector struct. Yeah. So the first time the server notices that there's a client is when we call populate sender, and it has a client, and suddenly we go look for its client details and can't find them. And we go, oh, a new client must have joined here, right? But it might make a lot of sense for us to insert events. So there's instructions in here. So you've got a variety of kinds of messages we can receive. I might just hack it in for now, and we'll figure it out from there. So how does the server, I've got tests around server receiving the first things, or in sector. I've got any tests here. Well, creation sync works, for instance. Here's one. So let's just create one that is related to the server getting a new connection home. wondering if we should just manage it kind of as a state-wise thing based on timing. Yeah. Okay, so world creation. So I'm just struggling with the idea of how do we tell a sector that players have come and gone, because this is what drives that list, and then that drives the respawn behavior that I mentioned before. If we have a period of time that's too large, you start writing some gameplay code against this essentially, and then the question is, where does the gameplay code live? I guess it lives in the space wrapper. It's really interesting as I go through this process trying to figure out how I want this to work. Hash map, client ID, sector client. Okay, so let's create a function for when a sector is told that a player is joined. Detects client. So we create a new sector, the master sector. We don't care about worlds in it really. We don't want to worry about an action. Don't want to send any messages, I don't care about that. Don't need a client, send packets. Yeah, most of the stuff is not relevant, though it might be useful to have the lock world here. So the thing I want to check is that if I say dot client joined, and I mention a client ID, say 3, right, and then I go and get the space, we want to assert equal some, well, I'll just say assert, and we're going to say that the master sector dot clients dot get or has contains key, and the key is client ID 3. Right, so that's the first thing I want to check. And the other thing I want to check is that if I say master sector dot tick, there's a perform specific tick, and I say I want you to perform 5 ticks, so it thinks for a little while, then we should find that when we go let space equal master sector dot get world, and we specify the space world ID, that client list we mentioned before should also contain the client ID. So space dot get, it's called lock world. Oh, this is an option. We're going to assert. Probably easier to just unwrap here. Let space world equal space dot expect should have a space world dot lock. There's a lock world inside what the sector should return. Get world. What is it called? A sync world at that point. Yeah, it's a world lock already. So we just need to get the sync world. So there's a lock world contains a sync world contains an actual specs world. This is like my abstraction for the network that I'm still deciding whether I like it or not. So let's have a look at the lock world structure. Okay. Here it is. Split vertically. Close this side. and in here there is a specs world. Oh, I think at this point I just call it confirmed, don't I? Which is the world that everyone agrees on. Later on I'll have like a one that we're running into the future or something similar, and I'll call something different. Now let line list equals space world dot fetch and use a turbofish to get the client list. And then from we once again expect that the space world knows that a client exists. So we're going to say that the client list dot clients dot contains key dot client ID 3, and I think it's complaining because it expects the key to be a reference to the key, not the key itself. Okay, server client join, correct. Okay, and that implies that there's like an online and offline component to this list of clients. It could be that a client goes offline, and so all of their things no longer are controlled by that client after a period of time. So the client leave is correct. So in this case, we have a sector client joins. We assert that we know the client is joined. We perform. So this test is kind of redundant. Perform specific tick, and then the next thing is if we tell the master sector that the client leaves, does the server keep tracking that client? Probably, and say they're disconnected. So it should still be true that the client is connected. I probably need to put some ticks in here. So they join, we wait a few ticks, they leave, we wait a few more ticks. I think I need to write the number 10 in here if I want 5 more ticks. And then that dictionary contains the information. So down here we get the space world and its client list, and again it should still contain that key, but we should also assert that client list dot is online is false, right? Equals false. Now is online does not exist yet. Here it should be true. Okay, so let's go to client list and add a public value here for each client, which is pub is online bool. Okay. So over time we're going to end up, in this approach over time we're going to end up with a dictionary full of people who have come and then gone again. It's going to contain however many people we had at peak as opposed to how many people we have right now. If the server runs a long time, this might be a problem. We probably want to keep track of the last tick online. So pub last tick online, last tick seen. See, my systems at the moment have no concept of what the global clock is. So if I told them what ticket that was last seen, it kind of doesn't matter. Let's just leave that as a comment, so I've got some thought on that to come back to. Okay, so these are two pieces of code that we need to make work. Now, new functions are client joins and client leaves, so I need to add those both to sector here. So pub function client joined. So joined and left. Joined. client left and client joined. So client joined, we have a mutable reference to self here, and we need to know which client, and in the process we go up here, there's one in the message, process message, or I just saw it before, that use the list of clients. So we try and get the clients, and when we have or insert with this, but in here I want to also add self. Need to put curly brackets to make this true. So we need curly brackets here for this lambda. But this is where we receive a message from someone we don't think is connected. Client joined, and we put in the connection ID. So if we don't ever get told that the client's joined, but we just mystically get told that the I just realized that this is not really going to work, because client joined is going to do something very similar. Let me just adjust my curtain solid. Oh, that was really stylish. Now you can see my office. Let me fix that up again. I just need to close them properly because it's really bright. There we go. Ace. Okay. Everything looks okay. Yep, that looks fine. So I don't stream with music, but normally I have music playing all the time. The reason why I don't stream with music is kind of out of respect for you guys and your song choices. You can listen to your own music, whatever that happens to be. If I was to stream the music but you couldn't hear it, then I'd be dancing to some music you can't hear, which would be like weird. And if you did tolerate my music choices, then all my videos would probably be like marked as copyright infringement, and so I wouldn't be able to put them on YouTube or something. So that's why there's no music. Not that anyone just asked, I just came to mind. I was just missing my music. Okay, populate center. Let's just say that we don't solve the problem that way. We don't ever call self client joined from inside that. Great. Why did I want to look at that code though? I wanted to get a block of code like this. So when client joins this client ID number, whatever it happens to be, we need to look up the client details. How do we know it is master? It's self.isMaster here. The reason why this is separated out is because the borrow checker notice is using self here and also using self here for self.clients, and it gets angry. Okay, so say we've just got their clients just joined. It might be easiest just to say here, in here we've got communication stacks, account details, world ID, world mapping, that sort of thing. Let's just add a couple more. Connected is a bull, and announced as another bool. I might not need an announced bool. I wonder. Let's just not do that right this second. So in sensor client here, I need to say connected is true, and page up to where we added it before, kind of by default, also needs to connected as true. Great. So now we've got both of those set up. We also need to try something else. Yes, we need to send an event. How do we send an event? There's like an instruction queue built into the sector. This events queue, or was it the one that was in the, I think it was the one that was in the ship world that we wanted to send it to. So what I want to do is go back to my list of actions. I've got player appears, it's one of my actions. Let's look at the full list, which is to be found in the action type. Place module, remove module, adjust the floor, player input, which is like cursor keys, player appears, creating a call, which is when you make a new ship, and making an asteroid field. These are all things we've done in the past. My coffee's run out. I need to make some more. I wanted to add a couple more actions here. Client online, and another one, client offline. Right? And so the point is, when the client goes online, they get added to the table of clients, and then later on some logic is going to say they appear somewhere, and if they go offline they need to like stop embodying all their things, and in both cases we probably want to tell the player that that's what's going on, like tell the other players who are on the server that something interesting is going on. So we probably need some sort of chat log or something I can write to that I haven't actually written yet. I try not to get too panicked about all the things I have yet to do. So mod client offline, mod client online. Those are two new modules we're going to add. This one's a mode, no, not a mood, a mod. Oops, it's sorted them for me, thank you very much. Create module, yes, we'll add that one. Create module, yes, we'll add this one. The name of the two classes are these two. So it's the online one, it's going to be the offline one. There was a very simple module I saw earlier. Let's just grab all that as a base or as a template. So client offline, client offline undo, executes action for client offline. Client offline undo doesn't have any data. It's going to have a client ID in it. Just needs some members. Its undo data is client offline undo. This is just making a new version of my template that I've got, or trait, sorry. Client offline has almost no data, it just has a client ID, which is a client ID, like so. Get rid of all that. When a client goes offline, we're going to write some code in here that stops it from controlling everything, and then write a test that tests that that's what's going on. We don't ever use reversing at the moment, so we're not going to bother with that right now. Great. We don't need any physics in here. Probably don't need much of this stuff. Most likely that's all we need. let's grab all this code, jump across to online. It's a very similar process of just copying and pasting all over the place to make a template. Online undo for online undo. Great. And if in the supply I put the right code, this test that I had before should start passing. While I'm at it, I might just go back into the mod, and I need to expose these. So pub use client offline, pub use client online is client online. This is my boilerplate, isn't it? It hasn't been too painful so far. Down here in action type, I have a function for all the different things you can call. So if you've got a spaceship world, you can now call these client online and offline things. I wonder if I pass those to every spaceship, or do I only put them in the star world? For now, let's just do them in the star world. Offline and online. That's done. Okay, that's the boilerplate done. Let's just try and compile now and see how that goes. Close all in group. Because I should have some failing tests in sector, because my online and offline don't do anything, where actually they need to modify that client list. Missing field connected. Yes, so I need to say false, not connected. Well, why would you create it if it wasn't connected? So I guess they are connected by default. No field is online. That's true. I haven't gone and made that yet. So in my client list, but it's not in that, it's in the actual client. So is it a get rather than get? Was unhappy about this. Fine. Yeah, I prefer the assert is equal to true. No method named client left. By the way, for those people who are new here and haven't been watching very long, we're making little spaceships like this. So let me just show them to you real quick, like that. And I'm making sure that when players decide that they want to fly ships, they can do so. But actually what we're doing is more specifically, like when people first join, we're creating this little pink guy in the first place. Up till now, I've had one pink guy that every single person can control in the game. We're going to transition to one per person, which is like actually multiplayer. But to do so, I need to kind of create one of these guys when the person's joined. And if you're piloting a ship, it needs to leave. So in this one, I'd hard coded that I was controlling that ship at the top. And in this case, pushing E did nothing. So I'm kind of removing this work in progress code and replacing it with something more robust that's going to last the rest of the project. Well, nothing lasts the rest of the project, but we'll see. So just complaining that I haven't yet created the client left function. So let's say we've got client joined. Let's make one called client left. You specify a client ID. You try and you in this case we're going to say if let some client equals self self.clients.get. So here we use .get. So if we have that client, because if we don't have the client, I really don't want to do anything anyway. It's like, oh, client left, but we don't even know who they are. We don't care. So with this client, so here we're going to need to make it mutable, mute, and here we probably say get mute, right? Client dot connected equals false. And that reminds me that soon we're going to have to add the connection event here. So blah blah connect. So yeah, I'll put that in next. Connected ID. We need to use a reference to that. Is online. So just complaining here about the same thing as we had up here. So we want to say it's going to be not online, it's going to be false. False. Now these two are going to fail because it's not going to contain the key, because we haven't sent the event and the event doesn't do anything. So I'm just making sure that the failing test is working so that we can see the failure and then we can go and fix it. It's very TDD of me. Test-driven development of me. Missing field is online. Client detail here needs to say whether the player is online or not. Is online true? Yep, that works for me. Here. Yeah, this is soon going to turn out to be wrong because we're adding it elsewhere, but okay. Missing field is online. Where's the constructor that it's mentioning? Let's just run this again and see what comes up. Oh yes, it's here, client detail. So I need to say is online true here. Great. Okay. Something wrong with my syntax. I forgot a comma here. And down here is online. It's still complaining about it, probably because of a comma problem. Might need a coffee break soon. Okay. It says here that all the tests have passed, but the reason why it says that is because we're looking at the wrong tests. So it's still showing us the player paired test, which still passes, which is good. But the one I care about is in sector. I want to check that those tests pass. So let's just let's just run the sector tests. And join doesn't work, leave doesn't work, and connection events are wrong. There's a problem here which is really minor, and it's to do with golden data, and it's just saying that this tick next 3 is wrong. And it should be 2. I probably changed that somewhere else. I don't really care that it's wrong, so we put a 2 in, and it should go away. Okay, so the problem here is we don't have a space world getting created by default. I guess the sector is not programmed to create a space world until it's told to do so. So let's change this from get world to get or create world. Yeah. So in that case it won't be an option. So get or create world, and then down here we'll do the same thing. Get or create world, and then it will return a world sync. So rather than expect, we need to say get world lock like this, and down here is the same thing. Great. So what that means is that I actually need to, so let's just undo that, what I just did. and then I need to go up here before the client even joins and create the space world. Get or create world space world ID, which is what gets done on the real server anyway, because something creates the ships. Yeah. One more time. Because otherwise all this spending time waiting for things to happen is not going to do anything, because there's no world for the events to go to. Although sending those events and processing them properly will probably create the space world anyway. Blah blah blah. Okay, that test is still failing that I was changing the golden data for. Once again, it's just the tick applied has changed, it's off by one error. So I'll just fix that real quick. It's just up here, and this piece of data here needs a 2 turned into it. Yeah, 3 turned into a 2. It's just some timing issue. Doesn't matter really. Join. Yep. So it's panicking just where we want it to. It's pointing out that the space world doesn't know about the client, and the reason why is we haven't told the space world about the client. So it's working exactly the way I want it to. I expect it to at this point. So let's have a look at our test sector. So our test sector is going to just remind me how to push instructions into a sector, because it does it here in as well, vertically. Control F4. So there's push instruction. So comms contain key make world instructions. Yeah, make comms. World setup instructions. Oh, that's right, yeah. So here we create a whole array queue of instructions we're going to push in. Seems redundant to do it that way exactly. Hold on. I'm trying to find the sector source, and then trying to find setup instructions. Oh, it's done to the world lock. The point is, somebody who owns the world is able to push instructions like actions and stuff into that. And that's the way we normally push actions in. I wonder if I should just do it with methods here. Instruction, world instruction queue. Because I only allow you to do it one time. And once you have instructions set up, then there's a way of executing those against it, against the world as it moves forward in time, like actions and whatnot. Form tick. These are the things we plan to do later. Yeah. So what this really comes down to is we want the server to have the ability to push instructions into the queue of things to go out. Another architectural issue. How does ship to space work? Because that might be the right place to put this. We create one of those here, and it handles sector events. So it's going to do it with. Oh, but those, I think those are designed to be things that the client authority server already know about. Yeah, these are things that actions have caused. So in order for it to go over the network, I need to do it with actions. So I think I'm going about this the wrong way. Client joined. Client left. Okay, so in our test we're going to have to test what I think I'm going to write into the server logic itself. So in here we've got client joined, but the next thing we have to do is have a list of instructions. So how do we get instructions? I'm getting enough boilerplate in here that I'm wondering if I should just write it directly into a test sector instance. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So I was going to, I'm surprised I haven't committed. I haven't committed when we started working because there was a lot of work that we'd done already before I started. But I was going to stage everything. So by staging everything, it's kind of like a half commit. It means if I make any changes now, I get back to where I am without too much effort. So I've written some code here to do with the master sector. Let's check that this is joined correct. We're going to use test sector here, which is a little class I created, which has two sectors in it. One's a server and one's a client. And it has some of the boilerplate all sorted out for me to make life a bit easier. So let test sector, let test sector equal a new one of these, like so. By the way, just to call out, guys, if you're watching this, say on Reddit, you click the upvotes, or if you're watching it on Twitch, you can subscribe, or you can comment. There's comment boxes around depending on where you are. And this is the Recall Singularity. We have Discord, which you're welcome to join, which is very lovely. And oh, thank you, AGM Cloud. I'll just put a link for you guys in the comments. You can come and hang out with us and be present. I'll tell you when there's a stream. Yeah. It's all very good. So we're going to work on this join correct test sector. So here it creates a new sector. Get a create world is not really required. We want to be able to say client joined. We might add functions for these. So in test sector, what do we want to do when a client joins? So I'm going to make this smaller because it's got too much blah blah in it for me to fit into a small screen. Normally I have smaller fonts and more stuff will fit. So so when a client joins, and I'm just going to write some code that I expect to put also in my server module later on. We're going to use self. We need to have a mod version of self. Mod self mutable, not mod. Mute self. Mute self. Client ID. Server, which is a sector on the so sector.client joined, and again client ID. It's all well and good. And then the next thing we have to do is we've got this idea of comms. So I think I put sector comms. We have comms for each one of the worlds here. But that's the client comms. So let's add some server comms. Server comms. And then here we have setup comms. Make comms. Makes you think to myself, I probably need to somehow make this more generic. Anyway. So that's how you make server comms. And then there's a make comms here. And a make comms there. And then down somewhere in here we have a push instruction. So we want something very similar to this push instruction that is used for push server instruction, like an event sent from the server as opposed to being sent from the client, because normally all our events so far have been sent from the clients. They're the ones with the graphical user interface, they're the ones running Godot. So when they push a button it creates an action that gets pushed in as an instruction, and this kind of code is getting executed from some Godot binding logic, although here it's just test version of the same thing. Do I have a server has world? Yeah, let's set server dot get world dot is sum, and we'll pass the world ID in here. So it's the same thing as the other code did. If server comms contains key, make self.make svr comms. So this is the logic we just added, and then in instructions here we use server comms so this will allow us to push events in from the server side. So when a client joins, what we need to do next is say self.push server instruction, and let's do it all world ID, so it's to the space world ID, and the instruction is going to be that a player has connected, so action client online, and that client online structure requires a client ID, which is, well, it's already there. So that's how the server should tell everybody that someone has joined. And client leaves should be similar. Client left with the client ID, and we push the server instruction, client offline, client offline, and the client ID. Now, there's a lot of actions that I'm creating over the time. I'm going to basically have to have a screen between the client and server that checks the actions as they go through to make sure that they're all valid. At the moment, when there's a bit too much trust going on with actions, just for development's sake. Yeah, there's a lot of stuff to do with these things that need to be nailed down. It expects the world instruction, and the way one it expects is perform action. Perform action. Like so. And I need to put another wrapper around this other one as well. Client joins, client leaves. So then on this left hand side we need to call these functions. Client join correct, get the space world. This probably is no longer required. Well, no, that is kind of required. So in test sector, we say, let's use the same words exactly, joined left. So here it's joined, test sector.joined. We need to make this mutable. Doop. So that seems right. Everything else I can see there in the code looks okay. Just doing kind of a proofread there. So everything here is going to be similar. It's client joins, perform some ticks. I meant to copy down the words test sector as well. Perform some ticks, client left. So the server, clients contains key. I don't care about the client's version of that. See if we can get world. I have nice interfaces for worlds here. There's space mute, yeah, which is probably what we want. Space mute and space client. So test sector, so all of this can be replaced by test sector dot space mute like this, and then use space here like that. So there's a test on the server, and then there's a second test on the client. So we're going to check on the server. So this test sector concept I've got up here in the unit test is like a class that manages both sides of the communication. So if it works properly, it should work properly on both server and client here. And I'm going to just kind of scratch the bottom test and just replace it completely wholesale. Bam. But this should be false now, and here it should be false. And the reason it should be false is because we're going to disconnect client left. Oops, I pushed Control F4 rather than Control F5. Close or group. It's complaining that this doesn't have the server comms in the list of variables here. SVR. That's where we have a dictionary of all the communications objects, and it's complaining that make server comms was not found in the class. Make comms exists. It's because I gave it the full name rather than the short name. I better how many times did I say server comms? Just the one. VER. And then another problem here. So this space here is lasting too long. So let's put a block around the server check here, and another block around the client check here, so that they don't share variables between each other. Make it really clear what's going on. And we've got a similar problem below. We're just going to copy this because I can't bother typing it again. And once again I need to say false here. And false here. So we should end up with a much more robust failing test. So our failing test here tells us that the client list.clients doesn't contain a key just there, which is correct because you'll recall our client online client so we've got a client online class, doesn't do anything yet, and we've also got a client offline class, also doesn't do anything yet. And so I'm going to go and take about a 3-minute break and make a cup of coffee and have a stretch and that sort of thing. So I'll leave you to do the same thing in 3 minutes. And if you want to go now, I apologize for the inconvenience of leaving you all alone. This is my Twitter. I suggest you have a look at that. I'll post in the chat one more time. Or Godot and space this one. I'll leave you with the top of my article to have a look at. And I will be back in 3 minutes. Thank you very much for watching so far. I'm back. Just give me a second. Excellent. Seems like everything's going. And surprisingly enough, I've still got 40 people, or 40 of you who would like to watch. I'm very glad to see it. Let us get centered. Wonder how this is going. Anyone upvoted me? Watch myself? No? Okay. All this. That ever actually get approved? No. Oh well. And yeah. Yay. Let us get back cracking. Hi Flintsteel. Thank you. Have you been watching long? Or you just joined us? Have you been watching recordings? Just about to add some logic to these client online and offline actions. So when the client goes online, as far as I understand, all I have to do is get the world and modify what the client is doing. To help me with this task, I'm going to look at the player input data. So move this on the right hand side. Right, so in here we use client info. No, that's not what I was thinking about. Yes, no, that's the right one. So when the client comes online, we need something very similar to this. Client info is the client list, client's entry, or insert a new client detail with the default values of nothing, I believe. Yeah. And then we need to say that client info dot is online is true. I believe that's the right one. Why is it not happy with this? Oh, and then we need to return an action result. So the action result is going to be a OK with a client online undo inside it that contains no data, because there's no data in one of those. So that's the online one, and the offline one is probably very similar. We just go into offline. It's currently unimplemented. Get rid of that. And we want offline undo, like so. Just joined, watching recordings. Wow, I'm really happy to see that somebody is enjoying watching the recordings, because I wasn't sure how good that would be to have like full recordings, what to highlight, that sort of thing. So thanks for the feedback. If you're enjoying it, you might want to jump into the Discord. Let me just give you a link again. Invite people, please come along. Copy, because I mentioned streams and you can discuss what you think of them, ask me questions, that sort of thing. There's a bunch of people there who are also like following the Godot Rust journey, if you want to do that yourself. Fair enough. Let's see. Flint. Well, I just trust you. There's no point really looking, is there? There's a lot of people who are very quiet on this Discord, and that's fine. Oh, nice to see you. There you are. Wave. Wave to Flint Steel. Thanks for joining me on the stream. Okay, it's nice that you can be here live. It works better for me this time too, because it gets a bit tiring and late otherwise, doing it late at night. So that's the offline one. We just need to set offline to false, and I believe that's going to be enough to make the test pass, because these things should get executed. But I'm surprised we haven't seen that unimplemented macro. As far as I understand, that causes a panic. So I would have thought I'd see a panic in the test. I'm not sure what unimplemented does. Brust. Yeah, it panics with a message not yet implemented when executed. Yeah, fair enough. So I should have seen a panic. It's something's wrong with my there must be something wrong with my execution of these actions, because I should have seen a panic occur. Yeah, before Recall Singularity, I also used Rust to create a chess engine. I mentioned it in the articles. So, chess. I created a chess AI. This one, I mentioned it on Reddit. What did I do before that? I had some other reasons I used Rust as well. But that was my first, serious use of Rust. I dabbled a bit as well, and I've also used it for making some Python modules. But yeah, the Recall Singularity was partially because I wanted to make a game in Rust. um, it is like the best language, so. I mean, obviously, scripting languages have their place, but I love high performance languages, and Rust gives me high performance and safety, so it's like, what is there not to love? Client list. So here I fetched that mutably, so I missed this line here. I don't think this is going to. There's some other thing going on that's causing us not to be able to send these, execute these actions. Some reason why they're not getting called from the dest. Otherwise, we should have had a panic. Player ID in the scope. Yeah, so this should be self.playerID, and it's called client ID. Yeah, like this. Here, offline. And some more tests where I've got variables I'm not actually using. Like for making the asteroids, I created an undo info variable but don't use it. Okay, so it still doesn't contain the key. So we call client joined, and we call push server instruction, and we send this, and so make server comms. I've got some ideas. I think this is highlighting a different bug, and the bug it's highlighting is that clients right now are the only ones who are allowed to send actions. They need to originate from a client because there's a process where the server rubber stamps things that the client is sending. So if you look at in sector, the way this works, we're going to shrink everything and then expand sector, control plus. The way this works is there's a populate sender command here, and all the outgoing messages are put into the network link here in populate sender for a particular client ID. And there's a way of clear outgoing. So this one is what the server gets this one, and it thinks to send out I need to figure out how to expand just one thing. Yeah, I don't know how to expand just one thing completely. So populate sender client. So these actions here, we're not sending them to ourselves at the moment. If that makes sense. So populate sender client will be going through all the instructions and sending those off. And populate sender server, it's probably not using the instructions at all. And part of this is this concept of having approved actions. So we send a perform action instruction here. There's a place where perform action gets consumed. World instruction perform action. So that creates an action submit. And then when we get an action submit, we then send back a response saying, yeah, that action is okay, we're going to do that. Action processed. Where do I do that? My point was kind of that if we're going to handle instructions like that, we need to actually have something similar on the server that processes its own instructions as if they just got received. So submit action. Yeah, this is exactly the place I was thinking of. So we're going to, when we receive an action here, where does it get submitted? So we process message from the client. Okay. So you got populate sender, you got populate sender server. And this is getting called for every single client ID, I think. Yeah, so we need something on tick that's doing this. Let's have a look for tick. So this block of code, we'll make a function for this. So power function loop back server messages. Right, so all the messages that we're sending to ourselves, if self.is master, we need a mutable reference to self for this. So this is kind of similar to what Togglebit was saying earlier on. It's going to be ugly as hell for now, but we can refactor it later when it turns into a mess. I don't need brackets, not C. If we are not the master, well, I'll just put the whole lot inside. No, if we're not the master, we'll return now. Okay. We're going to try and get the instructions. Well, there are instructions. We're going to go through. If there's a perform action instruction, we're going to immediately go self.process. There was a submit action, and we're going to pass in the parts of the action. So it's action dot world ID There's the first one. Second one is server connection ID. The third one is the action submit itself, which is action.message. Is it? When we perform an action. So what is an action submit? I don't think we have one yet. I don't think I've made one for this message yet, so I need to build one now. It's just the world ID, the action counter, and the action. So specify the world ID again. Oh, I just realized that server messages. How do we get world here? Oh, we're in world sync. Okay, that's fair enough. Fair enough. Just trying to remain calm as I work my way through this list of things. Okay. So the world ID is again equal to, so it's actually self.world ID. Well, ID. How does the action know the world ID? I don't think it does. Yeah, so we need to use self.world ID somehow. Okay. So I'm kind of lost in the maze of my own detail here. So where we're working is inside of something called world sync, which wraps a specs world inside a world lock. So there's a world lock which does a tick by tick by tick locking using actions only to modify the world. And then there's sync, world sync, which is supposed to send messages back and forward and pass them into world lock. And that's supposed to handle the networking. And then there's sector that's supposed to hold the whole thing together. We're currently in the sync. We're trying to make a loop back so that the server, when it sends messages, they get back to itself. Which is requiring me to look at code that I haven't looked at for ages. Action submit. I'm just going to pull this across and put it on my other screen where you can't see it. Not because I'm trying to keep it hidden from you, just because I want to be able to see it myself and I don't have enough real estate, though I probably do. But this particular one is not interesting enough to put on the screen. World ID need an action counter. Just going to put a 0 there because I can't be bothered putting anything else. And an action which just came out of the instruction. Great. So we call this with that action submit. That looks fair. And then we don't have to send it to anybody because it's local. And then in perform tick, we do all our tick type stuff. And then here we're going to loop back any messages. And this function, as you saw, if it's not the master, it's returned straight away. Does the tick know what the name of its world ID is? I don't even know if sync knows its world ID. I just use our state client's world ID. So it's like get world ID. Get ID. ID. How do we find that out? Do we ever use this client's world ID locally? So we have this concept of the client's world ID. It's not very clear what they're supposed to be. Self dot our state dot client world ID. Let's put that in there, and hopefully it'll work okay. Yeah, we shall see. No field is master on the world sync. I thought that's what I called it. Maybe it's inside the remote client class we say whether the state is master. If self dot state our state dot master equals master, and what's it called? Client sync state. And if it's not equal to this, that's what I wanted. Okay, it's just saying that this enum doesn't have equal defined. Our state dot state dot state. We should probably derive those for this as well. No field world ID is in the action. Yeah, so we're going to use this world ID up here instead. It's a little bit tedious. Sorry if it's boring you to tears. Cannot borrow star self is mutable because it's borrowed as immutable. Okay, so submitting an action is currently requires a mutable self. What do we do with self? Oh yeah, we're pushing into outgoing. We're changing world. So we use get instructions here. So what it's basically saying is you need to create an internal list of instructions or something similar, or borrow them some other way. Let instruction queue equal self.world.get instructions. Now this returns we don't want a reference to that. So we then have a world instruction queue which we can clone. Do I clone it? Dot cloned. Like so. Yeah, because this instruction queue is a thread-safe object that's designed to be used in multiple places. So it's okay to clone it, you'll get the same queue basically. And everything passed. So obviously my loopback just worked first time. This is proof that this is working by making the test fail again. So if I change this as online to true, then this action should get run and it should fail. Yep, wonderful, so wonderful. So when I set online to true, then here we were expected it to be false. It failed. So that's the first part of our sync. So when a client enters the game, everybody's going to know. All the clients should now know that there's a new client in the game. So the next thing is we can add some logic for the server only. So I can, if I went into my server, RS, I need to put in my server code similar to what I just wrote into the test sector. So let's just quickly write that in. Split vertically. So if you were here a little bit earlier on, you'll remember that I created just now client joined, client left, these two routines that tell the server that the client, tell the sector that the client joined, and also push an event to tell it. And so I want to put these here in my server code as well. So client joined and client left, like so. This code currently, I just accidentally, why? I just accidentally pasted setup instructions in here. This code currently uses SG simulation and a whole bunch of imports, but we should be able to go prelude and star and get rid of a bunch of this. And then we need to import this still. Now, pushing server instructions from in here, we're going to have a bunch of gameplay logic soon. Yeah. I'm going to copy the server instruction. Makes me think that I'm going to want to make some object that's been shared by test sector. I think that's going to be a refactor we do soon. Yeah. So make server comms, and then a bit further up we've got, or down, let's say function was called push server instruction. Yeah, we want this. And then we wanted the comms, so we've got world comms, we're going to keep that public, and we need server comms to be put into the server object up here, server. Import that, and then down here we need to make that the default. Server comms is equal to default, like so. Great. So there's going to be an opportunity to write some gameplay code in here soon. Something that's going to monitor the space world and say, okay, so we've got a client that's got no puck, no character that belongs to them, and essentially a respawn timer, and puts their puck somewhere. And there'll be other similar code that creates things. It's kind of exciting to actually be moving from like writing raw engine code to writing some gameplay. But not today. It's getting a bit late, and I need to stop working on my game and start working on all my boring contracting jobs that I need to work on today, configuring IIS on somebody's virtual machine. Yeah. Oh well. The things we do. Instructions. is that angry? Oh, I see. So in here, these are public. Pub. Take them down to the pub. And then client join never gets called, right? I know, Togglebit, I know. And not only is it using IIS, it's using something called WCF, which is even worse. It's like the worst kind of HTTP soap madness. You don't want to know. And it also involves SAP. Ugh. Yeah, that's the one. Client joined. I know. I wish I could. Client joined. Unless I'm doing something else which involves UV mapping, Python, Blender plugins, and pretty hardcore mathematics. So that's also quite fun. So kind of toggle between the two. And the WCF stuff is hopefully going to come to an end soon enough. When do I want to call client joined? I notice there's a connection here, and I notice there's a connection over here. And something similar here. So if I notice, I'm going to look up a connected client, and here we just made them connected. So now we can call self.client joined, and we can specify the connection ID. So I'll write client ID in here, and then interesting, I think I might need to put it in here as well. Yeah, I do. So this is when a client was joined in the past, and they've joined a second time. So they've just rejoined. And then down here is when we lose them. So if they were connected, disconnect them is what it's saying. So client left and star ID. So that should be all the plumbing I need for the client to realize when someone joins and leaves. So if I go into client online in here, and in this I write print line, and I debug ourselves. Sorry, I got those run the wrong way, and I pass in self here, so it writes out a message containing self serialized. Because I've got this debug derive here, I can do that. So if I do that there, and then I do it in the offline, let's build this. So those all pass, but we should see client online. Here it is twice, client offline twice. But the reason why you see it twice is because it's both server and client are writing out that message at the same time. And the reason why is the ticks are in sync. So if I build the game, build the server, run, let's try and run the server from here. Because I don't think it's going to compile first time, so I wanted to do it in the IDE where the bugs are easy to narrow down. So while it compiles, what else can I play for you? I mean, I've played this one a bunch of times already. This is the game. I've got this one here. It's like proud of modeling a little X cursor for deleting modules. These are all parts of what the game contains. Here's a little video demonstration of how stuff moves around the conveyors in this game. Here's one of actions that allow you to grow the floor, and it makes walls as well when you do that. Here's my very first GIF where I had like a mocked up floor, and I was just showing how the cursor's changing between the two ships. You can see how when it changes it rotates the cursor as it goes across. So here it's locked in with that ship, and then it goes across and it's rotated. So, you know, come a long way, baby. Okay, the compilation failed. Let's have a look at why. Array queue. It doesn't know what that is. It's some crossbeam. So in order to use array queue in this project, I'm going to have to copy my crossbeam declaration. Crossbeam queue like this, and pop it into the project for the server, which is here. And it also needs a crossbeam queue so I can use it. We don't need self.server. We need whatever's holding the sector in here. I'm having trouble spotting the sector. There must be a sector somewhere that the server is managing, or is it using the singleton sector? No, where's the sector? I see, we're passing sector in. Whenever we call a function, we're passing in sector. So for handle messages and so on. So I need to modify these, which means we can't really keep these communications here because they're also relevant to a single sector. Do I care? So push server instruction needs a sector. This needs a sector here. So I'm going to need to pass them which sector it is here. And then I'm going to need to say sector.client joined. And then I'm going to need to pass the sector into push server instruction. Like so. And here. And then I need to introduce these arguments into push server instruction like this. And make server comms up here. And then where it says this here self.server needs to be the sector we just got passed. And this push server instruction, again, it's going to need the sector, but only if we have to create the comms. Yeah. This is not going to work so well if I end up with the sector changes halfway through, but this is just so that the network stuff doesn't have to own the sector that I've done this way around. Failed to resolve, used array queue. Yeah, so this whole module, source, main, needs extern create crossbeam queue. And now in here, can we import this yet? How's it normally this line here? So I want to copy this, grab this line here as a reference and pop it at the top of the file. And that should fix that problem. It's saying that I shouldn't use it directly, I should just do this. Okay. I can live with that. Okay, so let's so back to using crossbeam queue. I thought that here in the server we had a main function and I just used, yeah. I see the problem. Problem is I added it to server, but server is not the library I'm working in right now. I'm using the class server, which is in the library sgnet, which is used by server. So I need to add crossbeam queue here, and then I need to add it to this list. I don't think I actually need to add it to this list for Rust to be happy, but I'm going to do it anyway. Okay. Here we need to pass the sector in. Do we even know the sector at this point? So here we probably need to pass the sector into this now. And then pass the sector in here. And here. And here. Look up connected client. And we got it here to pass in. Sector. And we got it here to pass in. Sector. Let's try again. Just trying to thread a whole bunch of sector management stuff into my network code. Lost client, client left, sector. It's very similar. This also needs to have an argument for sector we pass in. And then lost client needs to pass in its sector every time it's called. Okay, I've got some old code here saying self-server should be I'm not so keen on the server panicking, but we'll leave that as is for now. And then down here, client left needs to say sector. Cannot assign to star E because it's borrowed. Yeah, so we've got a similar problem as we had up here. We need to actually, if we're going to use the ID like this, we need to clone it here. And then do this. Because this is being moved into here. Closure requires unique access to self, but it is already borrowed. Okay, so we're already borrowing self, and so we can't call a method on self here. So if it was connected, so let's get this out of the closure with a mutable boolean. So bool was connected equals false. We'll make this mutable, mute, and it's actually let. I'm not doing C again. Let was connected equal false. In here we set it to true, and then this can come out here. So where it's safe to use self, and then we can say if was connected, call client left. And So was connected needs to actually be an option that contains this client ID, because you need to get the client ID out. So with ID equals none, and then here was connected equals sum, and we put copied ID in it, and then over here if let sum copied ID equals was connected, then we had an ID and it got passed down. Cannot find was connected here. Yeah, so because I called it was connected with ID. Cannot find crate for crossbeam queue. Yeah, that was a line I added before I realized that was a different binary. Almost there. Okay, so the server's running, right? And I'm going to run the game, and it's not going to compile either, I can just tell. Compile, you good thing. Compile. Go, go, go. You'll note that I like to render my little spaceships as ASCII art here on the screen, kind of as a diagnostic thing. Compile some more. Compile. Doesn't usually take this long to build. It's just because I've changed some libraries and so on. And it's been a while. Usually when I have to build SG simulation and so on, I don't have to rebuild the bindings. I must have changed my compiler version or my settings about what's released and what's not. I think it's partially because we're doing a release build now, not a debug one for the game. Makes everything much slower. Don't need to hear me drink. Okay, so we've got this coming up. So here's a renderer with ships, right? So you can see there's some spaceships on here, but that is not what I'm interested in right now. I'm interested in this line. See this client online. See that there? Client ID. That's client 0. And if you look in here, client online, client offline, client online again is client 0. And then if I create another version of the game, so I'm just launching one on the other screen. So see here, it says client online, client 1, and then offline and online again. So there's something about the loading time that's causing it to drop offline. So that's because the loading's taking too long and it's doing it all at the same time. I need to make a more elegant load process, but and I notice inputs aren't doing anything on the player, so that's probably to do with how I've been changing my inputs. This little player puck is no longer embodied by any player, so that's actually correct behavior for the current code that I couldn't control him. I can still control a client-side version of him using the arrow keys. So this is what we plan to do with the later on, but it's worth noting that this guy is client-side only, so this one version of the game, well, they should have their own version. There we are. I can move around, but you see these are two completely separate, and it's this one that if I was to expand the floor, bink, you see these are actually synchronized, and then I was suggesting I build a flight disk like so, and then I was to move this little dude over. Do we still have the animation? I think I must have turned off the animation that comes up with the press E for some reason or another. So oh, that one's working. But there's no writing. Very interesting. Anyway, so that's where we're at the moment with the Recall Singularity, which is a factory game for space. Soon I'll be able to move client side. You should have a new puck created. Thanks, Togglebin, but have a good sleep. I'm going to end in just a second anyway. So if you're interested in where we're at and progress so far, please join me on Twitter. I'm at Recall Singularity. You can search me. I'm on Reddit. If you found me on Reddit, you probably know my username. I post on there regularly, so you can follow me there. Or jump in my Discord. Here it is here. Let me show you another link. Copy. Think. It was a real pleasure entertaining you tonight, or today, depending on where you're from. So I wonder who I've got that I can recommend. Raid channel. I wonder who I don't follow any channels that are on. Back to Twitch. I'm just having a look at what else is going on in the world of okay, Stefan seems to be making games in Godot. I like the sound of that. So
I don't want a theme.
is there a button I can push to raid him? Right here.
Property overrides selected font color.
I can report him. Let's follow him first, and then free trials and so on. Okay, but I'm just going to go back to my stream manager and let's send all you guys over there. So nothing quite like watching Stefan. So thanks so much for watching me code. Thanks Flint Steel. It was a real pleasure you could join me this time. How about you guys go see Stefan start raid? And hopefully say nice things about the Recall Singularity and have a great time over there. It was a real pleasure hosting you today, and very, very soon you'll be able to like jump in, have your little dude spawn, move him around, jump on the ship, start controlling the ship. It's going to be very exciting. See you later. Wow, only 5 people followed the raid. Interesting. Anyway, bye.